Good evening, everyone. Number 26. 26. Who's got the opening prayer? I did not. Thank you. Dwight, who's got the Lord's Supper, closing prayer tonight? I didn't even look. Does it say? Oh, it's not in there anymore. Okay. Well, we'll get it covered. All right. Thank you very much. Dwight Hood. Got it. All right. Number 26. How many know this song? Very good. All right. Well, it'll be a trio tonight, it looks like. Think about the words as we try to learn this song and sing it. We're going to sing all 5 verses, I'm sorry. God moves in a mysterious way, His wonders to perform. He plants His footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. Deep in unfathomable minds of never-failing skill, He treasures up His bright designs and works His gracious will. Ye fearful saints, fresh courage take. The clouds ye so much dread are big with mercy and shall break in blessings on your head. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. Blind unbelief is sure to err and scam His work in vain. God is His own interpreter, and He will make it plain. All right, number 684. 684. This will be our song before the prayer. 684. Nearer, my God, to Thee, nearer to Thee, e'en though it be a cross that raiseth me, still all my song shall be nearer, my God, to Thee, nearer, my God, to Thee, nearer to Thee. Though like a wanderer, the sun gone down, darkness be over me, my rest a stone. Yet at my dreams I'd be near to thee. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee. Or if on joyful wing cleaving the sky, sun, moon, and stars forgot, upward I fly. Still my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee. If you're using your books, you can mark number 903 with a song of encouragement, 903. After you get that mark, if you would, open to number 886. 886. On Jordan's stormy banks I stand and cast a wishful eye to Canaan's fair and happy land where possessions lie. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, cross on the evergreen shore, sing the song of Moses, Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. Oh, the transporting rapturous scene that rises to my sight, sweet fields arrayed in living green and rivers of delight. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. When shall I reach reach that happy place and be forever blessed. When shall I see my Father's face and in his bosom rest? We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and dwell with Jesus evermore. Filled with delight, my raptured soul would here no longer stay. Though Jordan's waves around me roll, fearless I'd launch away. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and dwell with Jesus evermore.
Doing question and answers, who all needs a bulletin or a set of questions? I know you guys do. I was at Iris's brother's funeral yesterday, and they talked about how he was such a good singer, and he enjoyed singing, and he had a singing group, and they did fa sol la singing or solfege, and the 4 parts. Was that what it's called? Sacred harp. They would sing the notes, actually do, re, mi, and they would sing it out. And I remember this weird connection. That last song we sang, "We Will Rest in the Fair and Happy Land." I was in a group. One of the song leaders at church when I grew up got me and 3 other guys together to sing, and he said, "We want to do one in that style." And I had the alto line, and I did not know at all what these notes were. I'd never looked at them that way, and it was strange to me that he could see it that way. But I remember going and writing it down, writing my part down above the first line, because I was reading the treble clef, and I did it, but I was reading the notes, what I had written. So I just thought that's a neat experience that I'd share with you guys. We're doing a discussion based on our text this morning in John 19, digging a little bit further in that. The first question is sort of just to open, because we're talking about the garment that Jesus wore in our discussion this morning. Have you ever had a shirt or a suit, and I put here, that made you feel like $1,000,000? Have you ever had a shirt that was just really your favorite, or you felt really good wearing it? Or it was maybe something that was valuable that you want to share? That may have been a little bit of an awkward question.
Back in my high school days, the Levi jeans were becoming very popular.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't have them. We didn't have them before we bought them.
Mm-hmm.
When I got some, I was topping cotton.
Yeah. Your chest puffed out a little bit more when you're wearing them. Yeah.
I think girls always kind of feel that way, pick out that perfect prom dress or the perfect wedding dress or something. Where you wear your dress one time and keep it forever.
Right. I see sometimes they'll try to sell them, and they can't. I think they have a hard time getting rid of them like that. So, yeah, we put a lot of our emotions and feelings into a garment. And maybe we say, well, we shouldn't, but it means a lot. We want to look presentable, and like we talked about this morning, we oftentimes want to present ourselves in a way that we want to be perceived. Like this morning, I talked about the way I would dress in school and how I wanted to be perceived, and it didn't go so well. But if you're in other places, in other ways, it does say something about the way you're dressed and the way you look. Not to put too much emphasis on the outside, but it does share something. And then we're talking about Jesus' garment, and we talked about the significance of what that meant. We're in John chapter 19. Would somebody read verses 23 and 24?
When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and made 4 parts, one for each soldier, also his tunic. For the tunic was without seam, woven from top to bottom. So they said to one another, let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, to see whose it shall be. Thus this was to fulfill the scripture. They parted my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots.
Thank you so much. Question number 1, why did the soldiers not tear the seamless robe, the tunic? They did tear one other garment, and they divided it into 4 parts. But here's the garment that's seamless, and they didn't tear it. Why didn't they tear it? Yeah. What did they do? They cast lots, threw dice. There are different ways that they would cast the lot, and the lot would fall on somebody. So for one to have it would be more valuable, like Dwight said, be more valuable to keep it intact. And this is sort of it's sad because I think it points to the cross being a reality, that somebody's going home and benefiting from this in that way. But it's a valuable piece. How did the soldiers unwittingly, number 2, fulfill prophecy? And I have here scripture reference, Psalm 22:18. I would encourage you to go and read, in light of this, read Psalm 22. Because it talks a lot about what David's writing, a lot of what we see here. And it's messianic in tone. And here he talks about, why is God forsaking me? And he mentions this too, that they've divided my garments. And they've cast lots. But here the soldiers are fulfilling this prophecy. How did they do that? Yeah, absolutely. They did so unknowingly, unwittingly, I'd say by God's providence or God's grace, God's fulfilling this plan that He's had for Jesus Christ. Even when they didn't intend, God's plan is still coming to fruition, as His Word said. Yes. Right. It's kind of awful, isn't it? Yeah. And I wonder, they can't have known much, but we just kind of see their character through what they've done. And you look at other descriptions of what they've done to Jesus, and last week we talked about the humiliation they caused Jesus to have, not necessarily these soldiers, but some soldiers. We've asked what would cause a man to treat somebody like that in their dying day. Number 3, in what ways was Jesus' character seamless? Yeah. No flaw, no fault. I can't even think of the word. I'm not seamstress, and I probably should stay away, but I think a crease or a seam would be a point of weakness in a garment, right? Am I right in saying that? That if you have a seamless piece of fabric, it's stronger than if you cut it and then re-sew it. Yes. It was a very valuable piece, and they don't want to tear this thing. And here Jesus is, there's no weakness in him. Even leading up to the cross, he has the dignity to forgive those who are sinning against him, who are nailing him to the cross. He's going through with what the Father has asked him to do. He's doing his Father's will. There's no weakness, no fault line in him. Why was that necessary? Or why was it crucial for Jesus to be seamless? Do what? He was. Yes, absolutely. Brother Joe?
He could not sin. If he had sinned, he could not have gone back to the Father.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that respect, he was sinless.
Right.
Sinless.
Sinless. He was pure. The lamb that one would bring for the Passover could have how many flaws? 0. No bones could be broken, could have no sicknesses, no defects. If Jesus is to serve as our Passover lamb, we take the communion of the Lord Jesus, and it's the body and blood. We're going through what the Jews essentially did in the Passover. If we're covered in his blood, that blood has to be pure. That blood has to be clean. And so it's absolutely necessary that he offers a clean sacrifice. And you think of all the times Jesus was tested by Satan, by others. He's being put to the test, and it's necessary that he be sinless because he's our fulfillment to God's law. We fulfill it through him. Number 4, how did Jesus experience the indignity of nakedness while he's on the cross? Of course, talking about the robe, they've taken his robe and his garments.
He focused on the Father
Mm-hmm.
and his eternal destination. Put that out of his mind that this is the way it's got to be. For me to die for the sins of others.
And he was willing to go through that, to press through all these, what we might call doubts. His robes have been taken from him, and he's fully exposed. It might cause us a lot of shame for our clothes to be off in front of others, and yet he is bearing his body. He's vulnerable, and he's completely in the hands of those who are nailing him to this cross. He's in God's control, but he's leading himself there. He's like a sheep that's led to the slaughter. In what way is he experiencing the indignity of failure?
Well, I think he took on our failure.
Absolutely.
And he did so selflessly, knowing that he had no failures. He was taking ours on, taking our sin, our failures on, so that he could be the sacrifice for us.
He's absolutely, and in failure, and the next one, sin, he's absolutely recognizing that mankind has failed and they've sinned, and he's stepping in the place and taking the punishment and the wrath of those things, the wrath that's necessary upon those things. I discussed this morning, I'm glad we know the scriptures. I'm glad we know the end. But as Jesus is going through this, the people, and they can't see forward. And Jesus is actually experiencing this in real time. And I can't imagine the feeling of maybe some others, especially the disciples, that they've won. They've taken our Lord and they've put him on a cross, and now he's the one hanging, dying. But Sunday's coming. The resurrection's coming, and thank God for that, and thank God that we know that, and that's our hope. Which would have been the hardest for you to witness personally? And this is just a personal aside. What would have been the hardest to imagine seeing? Oh, man. That's the movie, The Passion of the Christ. That's one I could not physically watch that. I had to turn away. the thought of these stakes going through my hand or my arm.
Well, and then just the labored breathing. I know since I've had my surgery on my neck and stuff that they put in there, when I hold my hands up to put my hair up in a ponytail, it makes it very hard for me to breathe because it pushes up on it.
Right.
Just that little, and I can still breathe, but it just puts pressure on it. Just to imagine having your arms out like that and leaning down and just every breath is just a gap, labor.
Yeah. You have to choose between, am I going to cause this pain to go through my feet and up through my body, or am I going to get my next breath? It's awful. Yes. Mm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's can't imagine that. I may be touching on my Mother's Day sermon a little bit. I'm thinking about it, but going back to the birth story, Luke writes that Mary saw these things and she treasured them in her heart. And it says again after she goes and presents Jesus in the temple that she treasured these things in her heart. When Jesus goes off and gets lost at Passover in the temple, he says, don't you know I must be in my Father's house or in my Father's business? And then he went home and was obedient to his parents and obedient to God. And Mary treasured up these things in her heart. And I get the sense all along in these milestones, she's recognizing that he's different than other children, and she holds a special place in her heart, like all parents do. And here she's completely helpless to reach out to save him. And like you said, it's we can't fathom going through the pain on the other side. And here he's fulfilling his command to take care of his mother, or see that his mother's taken care of. What's the command? Honor thy father and mother, and then your days will be long on the earth. That's what he's doing. He's making sure that his mother is taken care in her old age. That's part of honoring your father and mother.
I think knowing that I'm the reason he's there would be the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can deal with war, I can deal with all of that, but knowing that I'm the reason that he's going through that he's suffering, that he had to endure the nails and the labor breathing and everything else, knowing that I caused that shame and that everything else, that would be tough.
That you were the reason that he came to that point. And what really made it hard, I had a preacher growing up who would say, if you were the only one in the world who would ever sin, he would have still done what he did. And that's powerful. It's not, we're lost in a group. I mean, Christ cares for you and I. What does Galatians 3:27 say? Does anybody have it memorized? Or can somebody read it?
For all of you who were baptized into Christ, clothe yourselves with Christ.
Thank you. Clothe yourselves, or some translations, most translations say put on, but the idea is we're putting on a garment, which I think is significant because we're talking about a garment here that was taken off from Jesus. What does it mean to be clothed with Christ? Have we thought about that before? What are the implications of being clothed with Christ? Yeah. It changes our attitude and our character. Yes. Absolutely. That ought to be the distinguishing mark. And like Jesus says, people will know you're my disciples. That ought to be the family resemblance. That ought to be the matching t-shirt. To be baptized into Christ is to be baptized into the mind of Christ. And in order, it's not just, it is important that we're being covered in His blood, but it's also that we're being baptized and immersed in His understanding, in the way that He saw the Father, and the way that He saw obedience. We're also being transformed in that way. The next part is, how does someone put on Christ? From Galatians 3:27. Through baptism, through immersion. And we understand that. That's the burial. As Christ died and was buried, we're buried in the water. And as Christ rose up from the tomb, we'll rise up out of the water with new life. Do you guys have any other questions before we get into our next section? If Jesus were to come to our generation today and preach the same gospel He preached in the first century, in general, how do you think would the world would respond? Obviously, we can't know specifically. It's okay. Mm-hmm. So many people would be unhappy, and some would appreciate that He was here. I heard you say something.
He would believe that He come back.
Mm-hmm.
He have a hard time.
Yeah.
Bad hard time. So our country is now.
Maybe He wouldn't get so far. That's what you're saying.
He would be a threat to some of these other people that have placed themselves in high positions of the church.
Mm-hmm.
It would be taken away their power.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right.
I think it's really neat that we have the Bible and we can look in hindsight and
Mhm.
know everything that's going on. But how neat would it be living with Christ and seeing for yourself all the miraculous things that He did and all the stories that He told, and just being there, not knowing the end, but being there and just feeling.
Yeah. He would be. I would love to have heard Him preach and pray, and like you're saying, just to be around Him. I want to know what He looked like, because we're drawn. The Scriptures draw us to Him. The Old Testament is pulling us forward, and the New Testament or the letters are pulling us back. Absolutely, we'd love to get to know Him. Here's what I wrote down, and in a sense, He is here because His body is here. I wonder, and let me know what you think, would it be any different from when He came in the first century? Because all the things you guys are saying, I absolutely agree with. You said the way our world is corrupted today, 2,000 years ago, the world was pretty corrupt too. You said He would come and be a threat to the leadership. The ones He had the strongest words for were the ones who were most religious. There were some who absolutely saw what He did and would draw themselves to His teaching. I think about Mary and Martha and how they were, it's Mary who's sitting at the feet of Jesus and just doesn't not want to leave His presence even to help her sister. All around. And I think the response would always be the same, because that's reflecting people's hearts. And I think we see what would happen. Many wouldn't like Him. Some would. I think He would still much associate with those who we might consider outcasts. We spent a quarter talking about the disciples, and none of the disciples were very educated, learned men. There was a tax collector. He may have crunched a lot of numbers, but they were, for the most part, common, everyday people. Most of them were fishermen. That's, I think, the people He would come to today. And the better question, and we'll close on this, how would you respond? I have a friend who's a youth minister in Enterprise, and he quoted his preacher on Facebook today, and I read that, and I thought, I got to read that back. Preacher's name is Keith Ellis. You may know him. or you may not. I figured there was some connection here, Alabama folks. He says this, I fear that sometimes we have a God of convenience and not a God of conviction. I don't know in what context he mentioned that, but I think it says a lot. Do we serve God out of expecting a convenience God? Or do we serve a God who we really are allowing to convict us of what's truth and what's right and wrong? I wonder, would we accept Jesus' words if he were here? I hope that we would. I absolutely do. He's speaking to us today through his word. Do we accept his words today? I pray that, and I'll leave you with this, as you know, we talk about the cross, and it's just, we're going to talk about other images that are associated with the cross, and it's not very good. It's in a way it's so gory, and the pieces that the parts that Jesus went through, I think we recognize our sin and what part we played in crucifying Jesus. But I pray that we see Jesus as a Lord who came to be crucified, not to make life on this earth easier. If we follow Jesus expecting this life to just be wonderful to us, I think we have a misunderstanding of what Jesus said. But I pray that we accept that hard lesson because it's not popular. People back in the first century would wonder why a man who was crucified could still be Lord. And yet he showed his power through the resurrection, and people would still say the same thing today because the things that the world considers wise, God throws into confusion, and he thwarts those words. And I pray that we understand that God is a God who's calling us deeper, that he's promised us a life, or he said that we would be hated for our faith at times. That Jesus is a Lord that went through the difficult part to be crucified on our behalf. Tonight, if there's something on your heart, if there's something bothering you, if there's some sin that you're struggling with, if you're struggling following Jesus, if you're struggling understanding what he wants for you and where he's calling you, we ask you to come. And if we can help you in any way, won't you come while we stand and sing?
Would you be free from the burden of sin? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you or evil a victory win? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you do service for Jesus your King? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you live daily his praises to sing? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the blood. In the blood of the Lamb. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Be seated, please. Is there anyone here tonight who needs to take the Lord's Supper? If you'll come forward to the front pew, we'll serve you there. Will you bow with me, please? Our Father in heaven, we come to you in prayer. We ask you to bless this bread which represents your body. Pray, Father, that we take it in a way that, of course, is pleasing and acceptable in your sight. And that we never forget that sacrifice you for us. In Jesus' name, amen. morning and this evening. I guess we have Monday night for the Masters Monday, is that correct? Ladies doing something soon? What is that? Is that?
Tomorrow night's ladies' night out.
Oh, thank you. Tomorrow night, I knew it was coming up soon, is Ladies' Night Out. So we guys get to just stay home and watch TV, is that what it is? I'm just checking. Oh, okay. All right. Anything else going on this week that we need to know of or remind people of? Wednesday night Bible study, Wednesday night meals. I can't get here at 6, I'm sorry, but
Hey,
I
all
wish
you
I
gotta do
could.
is tell me you're gonna be here, and I'll make sure you have a plate when you do.
But if y'all can come to that meal, that's a good deal, I'm telling you. All right. Any other questions or any other announcements? All right, let's be dismissed in a closing prayer, please. Our Father in heaven, we come to you in prayer. We thank you, Father, for your blessings that you give each of us. We pray, Father, that all of those that are suffering with illnesses and diseases and cancers and surgeries, we pray, Father, you'll be with them, give them strength to overcome these things and problems, and be with the doctors that administer to them, Lord. Be with Aaron and his family as they work here. Be with the elders and the deacons. Be with all the members here, Lord, that we can strive to serve you in ways that will glorify and grow your kingdom here on earth. Be with us, Lord, throughout the week, that we don't stumble. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. That's a deep subject.